Hello, everybody. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. We're just getting a few of you into the virtual room, and once we get up to the magic number, I'll get us started. Just in the meanwhile, enjoy the slides. I think I'm going to get us going because I just don't really want to use much more time that we have available with us with Matt today. So welcome everybody. My name is Deb Savaris. I'm the CEO of the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare, and the Tri-Peaks Partnership acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and recognise the continuing connection to land, water and community. And we pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present and emerging. Today's webinar will be recorded and all the slides will be distributed. So just listen and enjoy and participate as much as you are able. During question time, please feel free to use the chat and Q&A functions located in the bottom toolbar. But I want to say, in terms of this session, Matt's very keen to get questions along the way, so I might stop and ask questions, or if you've got questions, please pop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try and create a little bit of energy in the room rather than you sort of being just passive participants. If we don't get the opportunity to answer your questions, what we'll do is we'll try and get those questions answered offline. There's also going to be an evaluation that we'd really love you to complete at the end of the webinar. So, welcome to today's webinar delivered under the Tri-Peaks banner, a collaboration between the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare, the Victorian Health Association and the Victorian Alcohol and Drug Association, to support integrated practice and good governance across our three sectors. I'd like to acknowledge our colleagues from the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing and the Department of Health and service providers from across Victoria. Today's webinar is the next webinar in the Tri-Peaks Innovation webinar series focused on cross-sectoral solutions relevant to child and family, alcohol and other drugs, and the community health services sector. This webinar series will provide a platform for the three sector workforces to collectively hear about the innovations and intersections across the three sectors. During Tri-Peaks, I'll digress slightly, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people coming into these webinars every week, so we're really always delighted to have those of you joining us. In today's webinar, the Family Drug Treatment Court is a program within the Family Division of the Children's Court of Victoria that commenced at the Broadmeadows Children's Court in 2014 and has now been expanded to the Shepparton Children's Court. The program seeks to engage parents whose children have been removed from their care because of parental substance abuse or dependence, and uses intensive case coordination and holistic therapeutic intervention to address issues of substance misuse, with the aim of achieving safe and sustainable family reunification of parents and their children. The Family Drug Treatment Court is the first of its kind in Australia, and of course, as the Premier said and keeps saying, and has said after the election, we lead the country in some of these incredible initiatives. So pioneered in 2014 by Magistrate Greg Levine, the program has proven results. An independent evaluation shows that parents are 2.5 times more likely to reunify with their children than those engaged in mainstream court processes. So now to introduce Matt. So with a 25-year professional history of statutory, clinical leadership and managerial roles across the child and family services sector, and most recently in the Children's Court of Victoria, Matthew Wilson has significant expertise in the complexity of need of vulnerable kids and families, in the potential for innovation to have a significant impact on what is worsening child protection crisis in Victoria, and in the implementation and management of such innovation. As a 2020 Churchill Fellow, Matt hopes to investigate innovative, proven court-based approaches to the complexity and vulnerability of infants and their families in care and protection jurisdictions throughout the United States and the United Kingdom. Matt believes that solutions-focused court-based approaches that engage families in the intensive, judicially led integration of services across the multiple and complex needs of these most vulnerable families has the potential to create sustainable change and significantly impact on child safety and ability, and that the psychosocial and social cultural harms with Victoria's escalating child protection crisis can be minimised. As a statewide program manager of the Children's Court of Victoria Family Drug Treatment Court, Matt led the program to being awarded the prestigious 2019 Victorian Protecting Children's Awards, Robin Clark Making a Difference Award, and the first award of its kind to be awarded to the court. I know what that feels like, Matt, because I won one last year. They're great. It's a great privilege and honour to win those awards from your peers. So I feel, great to be sharing in that glory. I'm going to hand over to you now, Matt, to provide the presentation. But bear in mind, everybody, if you want to ask questions along the way, just put them in the chat. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Deb. I'll just share my screen. So thanks, Deb, and look, it's a real privilege to be presenting the Family Drug Treatment Court today, not just because as a program it's really dear to me, and I'm really proud of the work that we do, but also because I've attended a number of these TRIPICS webinars, and it's a real honour to be amongst some of the really high calibre presentations that you guys have hosted previously. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we all are and on which the Children's Court of Victoria does its work. I'm presenting from the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, to members of the stolen generations, and to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people who might be joining today. This is, fortunately or unfortunately, a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to go through the first couple of slides really quickly because I just want to sort of set the context in which the Family Drug Treatment Court operates. This is a slide just representing the growth in applications over the past 8 years to the Family Division of the Children's Court, noting a fairly steady increase in the workload of the court, with a bit of a dip in the last couple of COVID years. This slide represents the increase in the number of Victorian children experiencing at least one out-of-home care placement each year over the last 10 years. And alongside the increasing number of applications to the court, the increasing or generally trending upward number of children experiencing at least one out-of-home care placement also points to an increasing complexity that sits alongside the number of applications. This disturbing graph represents the really significant gap that continues to exist between the rate of children per 1,000 of population entering at least one out-of-home placement each year between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and non-Indigenous children at both the Victorian and national levels. Note that orange line represents Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in Victoria experiencing at least one out-of-home care placement in a year at a rate of 134.9 children per 1,000 of population, compared with just 6.7 non-Indigenous children per 1,000 of population. And the importance of this, is that this data is important in lots of ways, obviously, but the importance of this to this presentation will be shown later on in the presentation when we're looking at relative outcomes of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal participants in the Family Drug Treatment Court. And just briefly, this slide represents real recurrent government expenditure on child protection related care services, both in Victoria and national level, noting the spend in the 2021 financial year is creeping up towards $1 billion a year, and 4.5 billion nationally. The relevance of this slide really lies in the cost benefit of embracing innovations in this space, like the Family Drug Treatment Court, in attempting and succeeding to achieve higher rates of out-of-home care cost avoidance, both getting kids home quicker and more sustainably. So these next couple of slides just talk about the prevalence of parental alcohol and other drug use in applications to the Family Drug Treatment Court. And we know that parental AOD use is reported to be prevalent in 70% of primary applications to the Family Division, with variation across regions reaching up to 80% in audited regional areas. And we know that that's likely to be underreported as well. We know that in applications where children have been taken into emergency care, parental AOD use is prevalent in 77% of those applications, and that 90.5% of applications that report parental AOD use see the children of those parents having been taken into emergency care. So parental AOD use really, is prevalent in those matters before the court that represent the greatest disruption to children's lives. We also know that court orders representing a disruption to the pre-application living arrangements of children are statistically more likely to be made in response to parental AOD related applications than those applications that aren't related to parental AOD use. And that disruption might include a child being removed from home, or a parent being removed from the child's home, or a child being placed in hospital, something like that. This slide shows us that methamphetamine and amphetamine type substances generally the most prevalently used substances reported in primary applications, though the prevalence of all substance types and probably in particular alcohol is likely to be underreported. And in the study that this data came from, which was a 2019 study, polysubstance use was reported in 46.3% of parents who were reported to be using substances. So of course, in reality, that would be much higher as well. And these couple of charts really point to the complexity of those applications that relate to parental AOD use, and generally more complex in nature than applications that don't relate to parental AOD use when we measure complexity by the number of reported accompanying comorbid presentations. So we can see that in applications pertaining to family violence, parental AOD use is prevalent in 78.9% of those, 71.3% of applications relating to adverse parental mental health conditions, 86.6% of reports relating to parental interface with the criminal justice system, etc. So having established some jurisdictional context, I can now really proudly introduce the Family Drug Treatment Court, which, as Deb said, remains the first and still only of its kind in care and protection jurisdictions in Victoria. It was born of a Churchill Fellowship undertaken by Reserve Magistrate Gregory Levine in 2011, where his honour travelled throughout the United States and the United Kingdom looking at similar courts in those countries before he returned to Australia and successfully campaigned for a model to be piloted here in Melbourne. Funding for a pilot saw the drug court commence operations in Broadmeadows in 2014 and expand to Shepparton in 2019 following ongoing funding being secured. What the Family Drug Treatment Court is, it's a program that sits within the Family Division of the Children's Court. It's a voluntary, non-adversarial, solution-focused court, providing parents who have lost the care of their children the very best opportunity, we think, to achieve a level of recovery that can allow reunification to occur. And does that through offering really intensive court-based judicially led case management for a period of 12 months. So it's a 12-month program. And then there's an additional 6 months of aftercare. It involves frequent judicial monitoring of lessening frequency as participants progress through phases. There's 3 phases to the program, which we'll go through in a minute. It involves access to tailored and unique resources, including addiction-specific parenting programs, peer mentors, and other ancillary programs that come in and out from time to time. And really importantly, collaborative relationships with key stakeholders, including child protection, and perhaps particularly child protection, to ensure consistent and informed decision-making across the interface between all the parties.
There's a question in the chat, Matthew, if you want to.
Yep. Sorry, did you say there's a question?
It's a question in the chat, Matthew. So this is really about the investment. This is a tricky question, right? Because there's a question in the chat about investment. So we'll just go to that question. It basically is the investment in Victoria driving the increased number of out-of-home care experiences compared to the Commonwealth or something else? So I suspect for Jude, it's that saying, well, there's this really big investment. Is the investment a driver or the type of investment? So I think that's an interesting question, actually.
Driving the number of applications to the court.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you know, I think if you look at the correlating increase in complexity, I don't know that investment necessarily drives increased complexity. So I think you know, it's you know, perhaps a lack of investment in you know, at the public health level is perhaps seeing, you know, children and families, you know, in dire situations more frequently, and that, you know, a lack of early intervention perhaps, you know, adds to the complexity. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't point to, yeah, I would be more inclined to say a lack of investment is driving it more so than investment in and of itself.
Thank you, Matt.
That's okay. So these are our eligibility criteria. I think the thing to stress about these is, you know, we're pretty flexible really when we're considering referrals. What we really prioritise is, you know, the proximity to the point of removal of the child. We really want referrals, you know, really early in that process of parents working towards reunification. What we know is that, you know, the longer children are out of parental care, the harder it is to get them home. And that's certainly the case with addiction as well. You know, the more entrenched, you know, addictive behaviours come, the more difficult it is to mitigate them. So importantly, the parent that's being referred has to reside in the catchment or has to be case managed by the Child Protection Office that the Family Drug Treatment Court sits in services. So in Broadmeadows, they need to be case managed by Child Protection's Preston office, and in Shepparton, obviously they need to be managed by the Shepparton office or to some degree the Seymour office as well. It's voluntary, so parents have to be informed about what it is they're being referred to and you know, provide informed consent. Obviously, you have to be willing to participate and able to participate, and there needs to be obviously the presence of a parental substance use issue and acknowledgement on behalf of the parent that is the case. In terms of what would preclude someone from being eligible, it's really just an inability to participate. So if they have pending criminal matters that, you know, are more likely than not to result in a term of imprisonment, or you know, they're not physically able to participate in some of the requirements of the program, those are things that we would probably consider ineligible. So the family recovery plan, which is this is really what drives the identification of needs, goals and tasks associated with the participants' recovery and progress through the program, and really the purpose of these family recovery plans that our clinical staff undertake are threefold. It's to provide a sense of clarity and a sense of purpose for our participants, to provide some clarity around roles and responsibilities of care team meetings, and importantly to provide the Family Drug Treatment Court magistrate with a point of reference for the discussions that they're having with participants in our progress review hearings, which I'll get to in a minute, and also with respect to decision making around phase progression. The family recovery plans, they're intended to be living documents, so they're reviewed really regularly, and there is generally a series of goals and tasks associated with each phase, and phase progression is really dependent on goal attainment from each phase's family recovery plan. We do say that the family recovery plans are the parents' plans, so we're really guided by them in terms of what it is that they want to achieve. Although it is obviously important that the goals and tasks that they're working on are congruent with child protection case planning, so that we're not working at odds with what needs to happen in order for children to get home safely eventually. They're not the same, but they need to sort of be heading broadly in the same direction.
Can I just ask a question at that point, Matt, if that's okay? Yep. I was fortunate enough to be, I think my colleagues on this call, Dr. Lisa Griffiths, but I think I mentioned you were out of the Career Court in Broadmeadows, and VACA were there providing legal support as child protection would. So do VACA sit at the table in this court too?
Not from a legal perspective. We don't have, because the Family Drug Treatment Court is a program that sits within the court rather than a court in and of itself. We don't have legal practitioners in the Family Drug Treatment Court. The lawyers that are representing parents are welcome to attend, but it's not a legal hearing, so VACA certainly have a presence in the Family Drug Treatment Court, but not lawyers per se. It will be more the community service programs that are working with parents. At the moment, 43% of our participants are Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander mums and dads. Usually that sort of sits around 30 to 40% over the history of the program, and a little bit higher in Shepparton, where it's usually about 50% Aboriginal mums and dads and 50% non-Indigenous. So any of the support services that are working with our participants are really encouraged to come along to Family Drug Treatment Court progress review hearings and feed into the finding of solutions for our participants.
It really has got a very good feeling in the court. There's another comment here actually from Robert Slade. I live in the Gippsland region, and I believe we miss a lot of referrals to our organisations for FRO counselling. How can we ensure that we and other organisations can get parents referred to us from local courts?
Well, as I said, the locations that we're in at the moment, Broadmeadows and Shepparton, we're only able to take referrals from for families that are case managed by the Preston office of DFFH and the Shepparton or Seymour office. Certainly, if we had the opportunity to expand to other court locations like Morwell, that would be the opportunity for referrals from Gippsland. But yeah, unfortunately, at the moment, it's a case of postcode justice in a way that we're restricted to those offices, and the reason for that is those are the courts where the judicial decision making is located, so we need to operate alongside the progress of the court case through the mainstream court. And also what's a really critical part of why the Family Drug Treatment Court is successful is the nature of the relationship that we have with child protection. So we have a child protection practice leader who's a member of the Family Drug Treatment Court team, and their role is to act as a conduit between the clinical work of the court and child protection, as well as conveying, I suppose, the work and the expectations of the court to child protection, and vice versa, giving a voice to the child and the concerns of child protection within the program.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Gives people a bit of insight. And there is another comment in the chat that really says, are there mediation aspects to the process? And I know there are, because obviously there's mediating that's going on the whole time in these three areas of recovery. Do you want to make a comment about that? Because I think that certainly I noticed the magistrate having quite a mediation type role, almost at the heart of the proceedings.
Yeah, and Murrum-Nulligumbu that you observed is different to family drug treatment court, because that is a court hearing, whereas we're not. So there is mediation of ongoing mediation of concerns or conflicts in understandings, or in terms of goal identification that happens. But what we find is, because at the point of intake we're really looking for an acknowledgement from parents that yes, there is a alcohol or other drug problem, and that is the reason why that parent's children aren't in their care at that time. We're not really looking to mediate arguments about whether or not there's a problem or what the extent of that problem is. But obviously there's conflict between parents and child protection and parents and other services that are mediated around the table at every progress review hearing. What we're really trying to do is find solutions to all of the barriers that get in the way of parents embarking on a recovery journey, and where those are systemic barriers. It's absolutely the role of the magistrate and the family drug treatment court generally to try and mitigate those.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that answered the question or not.
Perfect. We'll let you. There is one other question. We could just keep going with the questions, but one more. So this is a question from Odyssey. Odyssey House program work with Broadmeadows family drug treatment courts. We've had a great experience with this program and get referrals a lot. I think it's just a lovely comment, and just sort of in many ways affirms your comments before about the need for more of the program for people to access. So
certainly happy for all of the positive.
We might let you keep going. Thanks, Matt. You're on mute.
Sorry, I got a message on my screen saying the host had muted me. I thought, oh my goodness, what did I say? So as I said, the 12 months of the family drug treatment court is broken up into 3 phases. And really what they represent is, a lessening of intensity of the program as a participant's addiction recovery progresses. So in the first phase, which we call the trust phase, which is really where, we're getting to know the participant, we're trying to form a trusting relationship with them and hoping that they form a trusting relationship with us. That's where they're coming along to court once a week for what we call the progress review hearings, which is where they sit at the table and around the table with the magistrate and with the family drug treatment court team, with any other support services or people that they want to bring with them, and have a conversation about, what were the goals and tasks, associated with that past week. How did we go with them? What got in the way? What are the triumphs? What are the challenges? And planning around, what are the goals and tasks for next week? How do we keep your recovery moving forward? In the first phase, participants are required to submit to urinalysis 3 times a week, and to engage with their clinical case manager from the family drug treatment court at least once a week, attend those family recovery plan meetings as required, and there is also an expectation that they engage with their child protection practitioner as required, including attending to contacts with their children. When participants enter the second phase of the program, it's called the readiness phase. It's when they're coming along to court for those progress review hearings once a fortnight. They're only attending urinalysis twice a week, but still really the same expectations around engagement with family drug treatment court staff and their other support people. Then in the third phase, which we call the family phase, and usually by the time participants are in or about to be in the third phase, quite often they've already achieved reunification with their children, or are in the window where that's imminent. And that's where they're coming along to court just once a month. They're attending urinalysis once a week on a random basis, and the expectation around engagement is a little bit less. And really in that phase, we're looking at ideally relapse prevention and planning for life after the family drug treatment court, really. So So I suppose the key message in terms of the phases is, that they are dependent on goal attainment associated with those family recovery plans. So that's why it's really important that, there is a focus on those plans being the parents' plan, so that they're goals and tasks that people are going to be motivated to attending. A lot of participants, the idea really is that each phase, well, originally the idea was that each phase was to be of about 4 months duration, but the reality is, some people, move from phase 1 to phase 2 really quickly. So sort of 4-6 weeks. Some people are in phase 1 for the entire 12 months of their time with the program. It doesn't necessarily reflect on whether or not reunification happens. Reunification can happen in phase 1 just as readily as it does in phase 3. It's just less likely. I was going to talk a little bit about the progress review hearings as well. So the weekly or fortnightly or monthly progress review hearings. So as I said, those are the weekly, fortnightly or monthly hearings where participants sit with the magistrate and the team and talk about, the challenges and triumphs, I suppose, associated with their pursuit of their goals. And that's where the opportunity to mediate, systemic barriers or misunderstandings will happen as well. And we use a therapeutic open court model. So all of our participants are in the room at the one time, and they come up to the table to speak with the team and the magistrate one at a time. And the purpose of that really is to encourage peer participation and accountability for behaviour, positive peer influence, and it encourages our participants to listen and share their own progress with the view of positively influencing other participants. That said, where there is a need to, and sometimes there is, hearings are held privately as well. So in terms of our outcomes, and these are the outcomes that we're really proud of. These are drawn from 2 independent evaluations that we've undergone in our history since 2014. So our participants 2.5 times more likely to achieve reunification than a matched comparison sample of AAD using parents going through mainstream children's court processes alone, where only 43.3% of substance using parents achieve reunification. For us, our reunification rate is up to 69% for participants who maintain an engagement of at least 9 months with us, and it's between 76 and 93% for 12-month engagements, which is really fantastic. What's critical though is that the last point there is that those outcomes are sustainable. So where reunification does occur through family drug treatment court participation, those families are 2.2 times less likely to have a substantiated report received by Child Protection in the post-court period. And significantly as well, not only when you're talking about the family life and the developmental trajectory of these kids, but also when we're talking about a cost-benefit analysis, which is what we need to demonstrate to be able to take referrals from Gippsland, for example, is that where reunification does happen through family drug treatment court participation, it happens a lot sooner. So an average of 1.4 years compared with an average of 3.5 years in the mainstream court. So this is a chart just depicting the reunification rate by time on program, and the little pictures of Deb and myself on my screen are blocking the right hand side of the graph, so I'll just have to look at my paper version. So this shows, really pleasingly that what we would hope to see, the longer participants engage with us, the greater the chance of reunification occurring. You see the 2 columns at the end saying completion and graduation. There are 3 pathways out of the family drug treatment court, I suppose. One is what we call being exited, and that might be participants withdrawing their consent, saying, I don't want to do this anymore, it's too hard, or I want to pursue another way of trying to achieve a recovery. What also happens a lot of the time, and it explains the sort of spike in reunifications around the 6-month mark there, is that, where participants do achieve reunification with their kids, quite often that will see their engagement with us then fall away. They've got, they've achieved what they came for, and they don't maintain an engagement with us. But pleasingly, and the other two, pathways are completion or graduation. So completion is where a participant has, maintained an engagement with us for the full 12 months. They might not necessarily have progressed through all 3 phases, or they might not have, ticked every single box that was identified for them, but they've lasted with us for the 12 months, whereas graduation is where participants have ticked every box that was identified for them in their family recovery plan, and have successfully worked their way through the phase. Really pleasingly, 100% of our graduates in Shepparton have achieved reunification. 92% have in Broadmeadows. So overall, 93% of our graduates achieve reunification, which, thinking back to the matched comparison sample in the mainstream court, where these parents, 43% of them achieve reunification, these are really substantial outcomes, particularly when you consider that they're also sustained beyond the court process. I mentioned earlier in relation to the discrepancy in the rate of Aboriginal children and non-Aboriginal children experiencing placement in out-of-home care, that's significant because of the outcomes we achieve with our Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal participants. And really pleasingly, I think this is data that demonstrates that we are a program that has a level of cultural safety and cultural competence that we are achieving very similar reunification rates for Aboriginal mums and dads and non-Aboriginal mums and dads, even to the extent that you'll see that the reunification rate for Aboriginal mums and dads is slightly higher than non-Aboriginal mums and dads, which is a really significant outcome in the context of the Children's Court. So why does it work? These are my thoughts about why we have the success that we do in the drug treatment court. So the notion of therapeutic jurisprudence, which is the sort of legal theory that underpins all solution-focused courts, basically posits that the way that we behave as an organisation, and the processes that court users experience as a result of going through the court can either have a positive, a neutral, or a negative effect on them. And it's essentially rethinking the user experience, and particularly with a view to ensuring that the way that we practice and not just in the family drug treatment court, but the influence we have on the Children's Court more broadly, is a culturally safe and culturally competent experience for the Aboriginal families that are such a large part of our participation cohort. As a theory, therapeutic jurisprudence doesn't really posit a reality that wouldn't be true of any organisational context. It just speaks to the user experience of relationships and processes of a system, and to the mind and the intent that we as practitioners or managers or judicial officers bring to our work. Judicially led case management achieves not only an alignment of case management tasks and functions to judicial expectations and decision making, so that the work that our participants are doing with their case managers match up with what it is that judicial decision makers need to see in terms of progress and ultimately reunification. But it also sees the participant experience the judicial officer as an interested and involved and informed authority figure and decision maker. And a relationship evolves. What we see consistently is a relationship evolves over the course of a participation's time with this, in which they experience as really rewarding, interpersonal relationship with the judicial officer, and that in itself incentivises engagement and progress towards goal attainment. The intensity of case management refers to a sufficiently dedicated case management resource, and in this case it's my amazingly passionate and skilled staff, some of whom might be watching this, shout out if you are, and the practice leadership staff in the drug court. Each of our program locations sees a maximum of 25 participants engaged in the program at any one time, and that's spread across 2.5 case management FTE. So small caseloads that allow for the intensity of the work that's required for our participants. Partnerships and collaboration. Our case managers work really hard to ensure collaborative, myelinated relationships with a wide range of sector partners to assist in streamlining communication and services for family drug treatment court participants. So when you're talking about the role or the need for mediation in the progress review hearings, hopefully a lot of that mediation has happened outside of the court, because 12 months is not a long time to pursue a recovery from addiction, as people here will know. So we really need not to be relying on weekly hearings to ensure that the system is coming together as it should around our participants. Some critical partners for us include Self-Help Addiction Resource Centre, the peer mentors that contribute to our participants, not only in the progress review hearings but also in the day-to-day lives of them. Incredibly valuable contributions to participants and to staff that the peer mentors make. Frankly, we wouldn't achieve the outcomes that we do as a program without the input of Shark's peer mentors. And one of the things that we're really, really proud of, or I'm really proud of, at least, is that we have a number of program graduates who have, once they've finished their time in the family drug treatment court, they've gone off and undertaken the Shark training and come back as Shark employed peer mentors to mentor people that are going through the program. That's something that's incredibly pleasing. Odyssey House Victoria is another really significant partner, as one of the comments mentioned before. Our partnership with them sees us have streamlined access to residential rehabilitation where that's indicated, and Odyssey House also provide for us the My Kids and Me parenting program, which is a parenting program designed specifically for parents who don't have their children in their care in the alcohol and other drug context. And also child protection, obviously critical partner. We need to be working hand in glove with them to make sure that the gains that our participants are making are the gains that child protection would like to see them be making in terms of children being able to be safely and sustainably reunified. I think another reason why family drug treatment court works is the power of routine and accountability. Everybody here will know that structure and routine and accountability to it are really important elements of recovery from addiction. The obligations of family drug treatment court participation keeps our participants really busy, not just the 3 times a week urinalysis and the coming to court every week and the case management appointments, but all the other aspects of what's required of participants to be working towards safe and stable reunification with their kids. It necessarily keeps them really busy, and the accountability that's associated with coming to court every week or every fortnight, talking to the magistrate saying, this is what needed to be achieved last week. How did you go? People want to come to court and say, yep, I did 2 out of those 3 things, or if there are barriers to people achieving goals and tasks, they want to have a conversation about how those can be overcome so that they can achieve them next time. And I think the other thing that's really powerful is the idea of connection as the antithesis of addiction. So we work really hard. Almost everything that we do is focused on building relationships, adaptive, pro-social relationships for our participants, whether it's with the peer mentors, whether it's with our staff and our other members of the care team, with the magistrate, and with other participants. There is a something of a therapeutic milieu that operates within the Family Drug Treatment Court that really assists in maintaining people's engagement and drives their recovery. Not most of our participants, when they come into the program, they don't have any non-substance using friends. They might be estranged from their family, and the reward that's experienced from positive relationships is something that really drives a recovery from addiction. And I've just put here some participant reflections. I won't read through them all. I can just leave them on the screen while people are asking questions, if there are any. This is the last slide. When people progress through phases, we ask them to put together a written reflection and then read out to the court. These are just snippets from some of those reflections. And those reflections are often really raw, and they can be quite emotional moments in the court, where people are sharing some really difficult things about where they've come from and where they hope to get. As people participate, as people progress through the program and the recovery progresses, the reflections get more and more joyous. It's a really powerful part of how people present their progress to their peers in the Family Drug Treatment Court. Really proud of some of these comments. They're really lovely. It just makes me really proud of the work that the Family Drug Treatment Court does, how skilled and passionate my staff are at what they do, and the really positive difference that we're able to make to our participants and their kids in what is traditionally a really difficult part of the sector, the children's court or child protection. It can be a pretty gloomy space to work a lot of the time. So, when you're creating these sorts of outcomes for people, or assisting them to create these outcomes for themselves, really, it's immensely rewarding. I can leave that up there for a little bit longer.
Leave that up there, Matt, if you wouldn't mind. I mean, I'm actually just looking at some of the stuff online. This is I don't know that it's up here. This is my favourite. Family Drug Treatment Court helped me to get my family back together. In doing so, the team at the Family Drug Treatment Court gave me unconditional, non-judgmental, positive help, support and guidance to build a healthy, loving lifestyle. I appreciate what the drug court did to support me and my family through hard times and getting my family back together. Thank you for everything. The court has turned my life around. It's just
pretty powerful stuff.
Really, I'm getting a bit emotional.
Stop.
Stop it. So, very powerful research in a way, apart from the actual intervention that you undertake that's incredibly detailed and specific. The research that's sort of almost, client-led in a way is quite remarkable. We're going to go to these final questions, Matt, if you don't mind, just before we wrap up, but I think are really terrific. I always love the questions and the comments, because it really helps. Hear what people are hearing. So this is an important one. Is the parenting program available? And this is clearly the Odyssey one. Is the parenting program available for use elsewhere? That might be something we need to talk to Stefan about, or anybody.
Yeah, I believe so. It's called My Kids and Me. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not a program that's been developed for the Family Drug Treatment Court. It's one that we purchase for our participants. Yeah. So there would be other organisations throughout Victoria and throughout Australia that have run My Kids and Me before.
So we might send that out as part of the information we send out as a link for Judith. And this is a really good one as well, Matt. Are all the staff employed by the Children's Court or an external org? And if the pilot has been completed, is there plans to extend the program across the state?
Yeah, so all of the Family Drug Treatment Court staff are employed by Court Services Victoria, Children's Court of Victoria, with the exception of the child protection practice leader who's employed by Child Protection. Obviously, they need to be a delegate of the secretary, so they have to be employed by the department. But it's important that they are employed by the department, because that's our conduit we need to be.
Yeah.
Working closely together in terms of, so we did receive ongoing funding for Broadmeadows at the end of the pilot, and Shepparton expansion came out of that. We would certainly love to expand to other courts, and it's something that we'll continue to seek to do through budget processes. We think that we've got a really good product that can make a really significant difference to people's lives. We know that the need is everywhere. We would love to expand to other areas.
Great. Well, budget's coming up in May, Matt, so we've all got a bit of work to do there. And this is from Rosie. I'm an AOD stroke FRO at Anglican and Addies. How do we get a drug treatment, family drug treatment court in Ringwood? The community from the east would totally benefit this. Rosie has a caseload of 27 to 29 families, which is huge. It really just builds on what you said before, though, doesn't it, Matt, about having to do the advocacy to extend the funding?
Yeah, and look, opportunities like this that allow me to promote the work that we do help. We're really open to people coming to visit the Family Drug Treatment Court to see what we do, which then gives people the opportunity to talk about it with their own networks. That's how word spreads and hopefully leads to the opportunity to expand into other areas.
Yeah, I think the physical amenity out of the court, out at Broadmeadows particularly, is particularly, as courts go, a particularly nice venue, nice place. It's got a beautiful feeling, and the families really don't mind rocking up there. It's got a nice vibe, hasn't it, Matt?
Yeah, we're fortunate that Broadmeadows was purpose-built to be a children's court, so it is supposed to be a welcoming environment that feels safe for court users. But in Shepparton, which is also a magnificent new building, that's a multi-jurisdictional court. It looks very austere. It looks very much like a court. Our outcomes there are the same as in Broadmeadows. So while a welcoming physical environment's really lovely and is important, thinking about therapeutic jurisprudence and what the people take away from their experience of being in court. The program can sustain not having that.
Isn't that interesting, Matt? That's a great bit of evidence, isn't it, about it's what the people do, not the physical environment.
Yeah.
The last question is really about men and men going through the program, in couples or on their own.
Yep. So since we began, I would say probably most of our participants are mums. Probably about 80% are mums. Probably about 20% have been dads. I think at the moment, and perhaps particularly in Shepparton, we might have more men than is usually the case on the program. So there's not really a significant difference, I don't think, between the outcomes that mums achieve and that dads achieve. Sometimes when we do have intact couples on the program, that can have some challenges in terms of how we support each of them to pursue their own recovery, as opposed to working with them as a couple. And the reality seems to be that not a lot of people that come into our program as an intact couple leave as an intact couple, sadly. So I don't think that's necessarily about us. I think that's just people's growth that comes with recovery, taking them in different directions, perhaps. I would also say all of the mums that we've had on the program, without exception, I think I would confidently say have current or historic experiences of family violence, with current or previous partners. A lot of the dads, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of the dads have been perpetrators of family violence. So there are unique challenges associated with men in the program sometimes, and I would say particularly during COVID when we were online. I have a bit of a theory that I don't actually have any evidence to support, but I think that men are more difficult to engage through online or via the phone. If you think about having a phone conversation with your dad, I think dads just don't men are less good at engaging genuinely through those modalities. But as I said, I have no evidence to support that. That's just a theory.
Well, we've always got to start with the theory, and then we can build the evidence around that.
That's right.
Matt.
But fortunately, we're all back face to face now, which is enormous relief after the difficulties of the last couple of years that everyone faced.
Well, we are at 12:59. There's some beautiful comments in the chat, Matt, about the work you're doing.
I should stop sharing my screen so I can see them.
We'll collect them all up. We'll also please fill in the evaluation so we can hand that back to Matt. Our speakers love getting the evaluation because it helps them think about where people focused or what more people want to know. Oliver has put the link in the chat. That will be important for you if you want to cut and paste that and then have a bit of a look at this after the session. We will definitely send you the slides and we'll definitely send you the recording. Look, Matt wraps up for us our webinar series for 2022. So I want to thank him being at the end of a lot of fabulous webinars. This one though, when you look at those quotes, has been just so remarkable, because when you hear from people who use a service that works for them and means they can keep their family together, I'm not sure there's much more that matters to people than that. So I want to say thank you, Matt. It's been wonderful seeing you on the screen and getting to know you. And hopefully we can all do a bit of advocacy that brings about more of these courts across Victoria in 2023.
Thank you. And my contact details are in the slides. So anyone that's watching, feel free to reach out, with any other questions or anything like that.
There you go. So lots of lovely comments. We'll save them all up, and well deserved, Matt, because I know how hard it is to get these things off the ground, but then you have to prove them, which you've indeed done. So thank you so much, and
thank you.
Catch up with you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.